And thank you to everyone who contributed to this inquiry, with a special commendation to the Chair and Deputy Chair, the Secretariat and my colleagues on the committee. A dynamic economy is one where every Australian can fulfil their potential, where life is rich with opportunity, where our society is diverse, cohesive and fair, and where every Australian enjoys a high standard of living and can access world-class services they need. But the evidence is suggesting that our economy is not performing as well as we might hope. In the last decade, GDP per capita growth has just been 0.6% per year, and labour productivity growth has grown at its lowest rate for 6 decades. And while the wealth of retired generations has grown handsomely, the wealth of younger generations has stagnated. These are real concerns, and so it's appropriate that the committee has inquired into the topic of competition and dynamism and sought out opportunities for Australia to lift its game. The majority report is a thorough inquiry into the competition issues and makes a large number of sensible strategic recommendations, including things like the use of public sector data, competition infrastructure and focus on public sector procurement so all firms can thrive. One particularly important part of the report is access to capital for startups, small businesses and dynamic growing firms, because young firms are critical for productivity growth, and they identified issues in funding, including the FIRB process, superannuation performance tests, as well as challenges in accessing bank finance. I strongly support the recommendations of the report, but I also believe we need to go further to address critical economic challenges we are facing, and so I've provided some additional comments and recommendations. To start with, the report is mainly silent on industrial relations and tax. These are very significant drivers of productivity in our economy, but both issues have become bitterly politicised. I think we need a sensible, centrist, stable approach that prioritises productivity and dynamism over politics. I recommended some institutional reforms, such as establishing a tax reform commission and tasking the Productivity Commission to review the impact of our industrial relations settings, as well as other specific changes, such as government incentives to reduce stamp duty. The main report acknowledged that government regulation can both drive competition and dynamism as well as hinder it, and made recommendations on the government's work on regulation right-sizing, as well as specific regulation recommendations on particular industries. I think all these recommendations are extremely important. I also acknowledge that the challenges of right-sizing regulation are so significant that I think we may need even further support, including asking the Productivity Commission to identify priority areas for a regulatory review and establishing a Minister for Better Regulation, learning from the experiences of the New South Wales Government to lead a complete overhaul of our regulatory approach. In my comments, I also highlighted how climate affects dynamism and also focused on how can we increase the diffusion of innovation, which is so important to raising dynamism across all firms in our economy. Finally, in discussions of dynamism, there is so often a focus on business and bad actors, on rent-seeking. This is all absolutely appropriate and was an appropriate focus of much of the report. But I believe there is far too little looking in the mirror in the role of government and in the public sector in holding back dynamism through its own services, actions and decision-making. I commend the main report, which identified increased government transparency can improve the dynamic effects of the government sector, but I also believe we can go further. I believe that government should make sure that it relies on cost-benefit analysis when it assesses infrastructure investments, and to develop a broader, effective evaluative framework to more broadly assess government spending. I believe and recommended that the government should also appoint a Minister for Customer Service, again learning from the experiences of New South Wales, to drive a change in culture so that businesses and citizens are at the heart of government practices, including things like establishing a federal small business and codes list. And finally, I believe the government should commit to publicly publish and respond to all inquiries and reports, so that in the time that committees like ourselves, but also members of the public, have put into the inquiries that are across this parliament are not wasted. My overarching message to the government is that it is now the time to address economic dynamism. The Treasurer has indicated that his priority is starting to move from fighting inflation to start driving growth. And I believe if we undertake the right microeconomic reforms, we can do both. I acknowledge the government has made some great progress in things that drive dynamism, including their focus on competition, reform to skilled migration, increasing apprenticeships, as well as their commitment recently to the regulatory grid, which I think was an important part of the recommendation of the report, and great to see the government already taking action on this. However, I do not think we are doing enough to address the challenges we face, also address the opportunities we conceive. We have been a lucky country, but we also need to make our own luck. I urge the government to proactively address the recommendations in the report, including those that I have raised in my additional comments, and to present to this House how they will act on them with alacrity. Because economic dynamism is not just an idea. It drives the quality of our lives. It underpins the wonderful services that we can access in Australia. It drives the economy in such a broad way that allows all Australians to thrive. The time to act on it is now, and I commend this report to the House.